Hi, I'm Julia Brothers with the NDI elections team. This video is part of a larger academy that we're currently holding in Belgrade, Serbia, on how to expose, monitor, and mitigate malign disinformation in the digital space. Today we're going to talk about how disinformation and other digital threats are used to undermine the information environment in elections, and what citizen election observers can do to counter and mitigate it. We know that disinformation isn't new. Things like government-sponsored propaganda, rumors, and sensationalized news sources have always existed. However, advances in technology have meant that that information online, where a lot of citizens get their news, can move at distances and speeds and volumes that are completely unprecedented. While back then, a piece of fake news that may only reach a small group of people who might buy that tabloid magazine while they're waiting in line at their local grocery store, now means that that news item can go viral and fast.
Hey Michael.
Yeah, Julia?
Did you see that Batchild's been working for the opposition? My friend just retweeted it.
Yeah, my mom posted on Facebook about Batchild beating up voters.
Oh no. Just to be safe, I'm not gonna vote.
Yeah. Oh, did you see? Hashtag boycott Batchild election is now trending on Twitter.
Oh my gosh.
So what are the tactics that are being used to push disinformation online? And what are they trying to achieve? We've seen a lot of different trends in disinformation around elections. One of the biggest is just generally trying to make truth indistinguishable from falsehood. This is something that can really confuse voters, and it can frustrate voters, and it can undermine their confidence in democratic institutions. Second, we see that disinformation is often used to mobilize and radicalize users. This is often through something we call manufactured consensus, or creating the illusion that there is significant support for an idea or a methodology online in order to sway someone's political opinion. Obviously, we also see a lot of the exploitation of social divisions, things like using hate speech or dangerous speech or gender-based violence and harassment online to marginalize populations. This can exacerbate divisions in ethnic minorities or among religious minorities, and in often cases might exacerbate triggers for electoral violence. We know that disinformation also can co-opt local movements. So actors from outside can have an influence on a place that they are otherwise don't reside or have any jurisdiction in, and co-opt those movements. We also see that there has been a push to sort of make digital disinformation move from the digital space to traditional media, and kind of seeing that combination of those two mediums working together. We know that there are often strategic amplifications to media outlets, particularly targeting journalists or bloggers or influencers to help spread content. And finally, a major trend we see is the intentional saturation of the information environment itself to crowd out divergent voices. So you might see discourse online being completely overwhelmed by bots or by a certain narrative in order to prevent there from being real political discourse. So how are these tactics effective? How do they work? Well, they work by maximizing the design and the algorithms of the social media platforms in order to amplify the narratives they're trying to push. Some of the most common amplifiers are things like bots and botnets. Now, bots in and of themselves are just a simple computer code that can kind of pose as a human online and can make posts and tweets and things like that. Bots can be coordinated into larger networks of hundreds or even thousands, running often on infected computers, and those we would call botnets. Another major amplifier are internet trolls, which really is someone who is online and trying to upset the discourse and people on the internet in order to distract and sow discord. Trolls can be lone actors, or they can be coordinated. You might have heard the term troll army in those coordinated efforts. Also, click farms or content farms. These are commercial enterprises that use a large number of workers, often being paid low wages, to generate fraudulent profiles, fraudulent posts, and especially things like likes. or other kinds of or retweets or things that might boost the content up in a news feed. Sock puppet accounts are also common. These are fake online identities or accounts that are designed to deceive. Sock puppets are often used to sort of push a narrative by making it sound like there are multiple voices on a topic when actually those accounts are all being run by one single human. Advertisements or money to boost posts is a way that users can promote their posts or their tweets or their videos so that they're seen by more people. Because of the big data that's available through social media now, they can target audiences by interest, by age, by geography, and by other demographics that can really kind of hyper-target an individual. Or also fake news sites and fake URLs. Those are things that are often shared. Fake news often is under media names that might sound like they are a reputable source. Maybe they're designed to sort of be posing as a respected media outlet, or at least one that sounds like it could be a real media outlet. So remember that tweet about the bat child from earlier? Well, the Washington Gazette isn't a real website or news outlet. I just made it up. And finally, we know that a lot of the social media platforms tend to favor visual content. So this includes things like memes or videos or photos. We often see that manipulated photos or manipulated videos are frequent ways of spreading disinformation, often posing again as coming from official respected sources. The image you'll see below was disseminated in Kenya to discredit a politician, and it was doctored to look like it was a press release from Transparency International, when in reality they had just stolen their logo.
Oh cool, apparently NDI is adding Beyonce and Messi to its board.
Wait a minute, really?
Yeah, look, there's a press release being shared all over Facebook about it.
That can't be true.
Well, it has the NDI logo on it, so it must be real.
That is not going to happen. But Michelle Obama's going to join the board.
So what can observers do about this problem? Well, there are a number of tools and a number of interventions that citizen election observers can do to help expose and mitigate disinformation. The first of which is, of course, just tracking and analyzing online content through social media monitoring. Groups could also consider augmenting that approach and adding traditional media monitoring as well, especially if you're seeing how disinformation in the digital space is spilling over into traditional media as well. If a group lacks the capacity or resources for a robust social media monitoring effort, they can consider building relationships with other civic tech groups or media monitors or fact checkers who may already be working in this space. And that way, then you can kind of exchange information and make sure that you're still considering this issue as part of your broader electoral analysis. Groups can also consider consulting or conducting their own public opinion research in order to gather more information about how people sort of consume disinformation and what kind of messages they might respond to in order to counter that. This also could involve doing a civic education campaign that's related to promoting digital or media literacy. Citizen observers can also serve as a really critical information point to debunk false narratives and bad data. If groups improve their external communications to promote more fact-based content and contribute to broader fact-checking efforts, then that can help counter malinformation and around your electoral environment. And finally, groups should really consider pushing for more open electoral data, enhancing transparency of official electoral data available online, things like campaign finance data or the results of an electoral outcome can inoculate election management bodies from conspiracy theories and rumors, while also increasing citizens' ability to fact-check information that they may receive from third parties.
It looks like this campaign to disinform voters is pushed by coordinated trolls.
And this nest of bots. They're trying to make it sound like voters need to bring an ID and a matching credit card in order to vote, which is obviously not true.
Bots are the worst. Sorry, Odie.
But before citizen election observers decide what kind of activities they want to take on, they really need to start doing some strategic planning. Observers cannot possibly monitor the entire internet. So it's important to figure out really what are the major drivers of disinformation in your particular environment, and what are the major electoral integrity threats that you're seeing. Therefore, you should really conduct a kind of a preliminary assessment of your information environment and ask questions like, where do citizens get most of their election and political information? Is it online or offline? If it's online, what platforms, what sources? What's the legal framework for regulating any of this information? Is social media even included in the legal framework? What kind of monitoring bodies and oversight mechanisms are there? What have been the trends historically in terms of disinformation in politics and disinformation in your electoral processes? And who's already sort of trying to address this issue? What are some of the mitigating factors and components? So conducting a preliminary assessment is very important to start to narrow down your focus and figure out what you can be monitoring in order to have the greatest impact. That said, there are some challenges to monitoring disinformation, particularly online. First and foremost, sources of disinformation online tend to lack transparency, right? We saw all of those bots, fake news sites, fake accounts. It makes it really hard to get at what the actual source of the disinformation is, who's responsible for it. Also, things like bots are just becoming more sophisticated, so they're harder to identify. And it's harder for people to know whether they're interacting with a computer or whether they're interacting with a real human. Also, many social media platforms have privacy and security settings that make them very difficult to monitor. While Twitter is very easy because most of that information is public, Facebook, of course, has a lot of privacy settings that make it difficult to obviously see someone's private feed. And that goes for a number of other social media sites as well. And in particular, the rise of encrypted messaging platforms like WhatsApp, those are obviously completely private. And you certainly don't have access to an individual's conversation on those platforms. Although we do know that WhatsApp has been contributing to disinformation in a number of places. And finally, uses and popularity of social media platforms vary from country to country. In some places, Facebook is the most popular tool. In some places, WhatsApp is. In some places, people are getting a lot of information from YouTube or getting a lot of information from Instagram. And so there's really no one-size-fits-all monitoring methodology. And we do know that disinformation tactics are always evolving. So it's really important to kind of contextualize these sorts of issues for your particular electoral environment. Please stay tuned for more information on how to monitor disinformation in the electoral process and any updates that are coming from our Belgrade Academy. And please feel free to contact us with any thoughts or questions.